Hi everyone, welcome to Tiki with Ray Live today at the Devil's Reef. I appreciate y'all for coming out today. Today we are going to talk about something that I've been thinking about, well, since I've been into Tiki, which is the fourth wave of Tiki. This is where I'm going to put the lines, or this as far as I know. Now again, I may be right, I may be wrong. So as far as I know, there are three waves of Tiki. There's the golden age of Tiki, which was the 50s, the 60s, There was pre-Tiki before that, but there was the Tiki idols weren't part of the image yet. It was more of the beachcomber look. I mean, the interesting thing about Don the Beachcomber is, like, if you look at any pictures of the original Don the Beachcomber location, there isn't any Tikis there yet. But then eventually, I think going into like the 50s, they started to have the Tiki elements to it. But anyway, so to me, the golden age of Tiki, the first wave of Tiki, is the mid-century. So it kind of went underground into the 70s and into the 80s, and then into the late 80s, early 90s is when you started to have the Tiki revival, and that's when you had guys like Otto, Sven Kirsten, Beach Bum Berry starting to like rediscover Tiki. And then the real tricky question is like, well, what's the third wave of Tiki? And I think we're in the third wave of Tiki right now. And to me, the third wave of Tiki is when things change from searching out the old Tiki and making new. I like to think of like Forbidden Island as kind of like that mile marker, because it's like, hey, here's a new Tiki bar, as opposed to just kind of going to the old Tiki bars. So I think we're in the third wave, but potentially we could be in the fourth wave.
The reason I got involved in this topic is
we were drinking at your house.
We were drinking at my house.
And then Sean showed up, and I'm like, hey, I got my camera. Let's talk about it.
But I drunkenly posed the question, and let's see if I can do it when I'm still sober now. Have we reached peak Tiki? And what is peak Tiki? And what wave are we in? My pessimistic nature is, are we at the peak of a good thing, or where are we going from here? And that's kind of, I wonder what I was drinking that got me so pessimistic. But
rum.
anyway.
You were drinking rum. No, wait, was I drinking at that point? Yeah, I was drinking. That was back in December. So I was definitely drinking. So we were all drinking. So, that's a good question. I mean, peak Tiki. I will say this. I think Tiki, as we know it traditionally, reached its peak kind of probably in the 2000. Like, to me, like the Smuggler's Cookbook, like when that came out.
There's an interesting article I read the other day that was talking about how pre-2000, 2010s, to be involved in a subculture, Tiki or skateboarding or surfing or whatever, you had to go out and hunt for that subculture to be a part of. You had to go find a Tiki bar. You had to go find a skate shop. You had to go actively try to be a part of it. Where with the advent of social media, the prevalence of online access all day, every day, you can feel like you're part of a subculture without putting a whole lot of effort into it anymore. And I think that's affecting a lot of these all of these subcultures out there, and definitely is going to put a large number of people who are interested but less active on a daily basis into those cultures.
So let's pull the thread on that. So what is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, what you're saying is social media, so anybody who's tried to buy a vintage Tiki mug lately knows that social media has, made scarcity and a big commodity and expense, and it's harder to find Kappa cloth, and Oceanic Arts is closed. So the availability has also driven scarcity, or at least prices up, ironically, at the same time. But going deeper than that, when you're saying people can get into a group or culture because it's accessible through social media or the internet, are you saying that is that a good thing, a bad thing, or if it's neutral, what does that mean?
I think it's a new thing. So it's got some negatives to it. Definitely the connection that you've developed when you have to go out and meet people in person, you start to lose that when you have 18,000 different Facebook groups highlighting different sections about Tiki. You can join pre-Tiki groups, olive rays, different Tiki organizations.
Hive organizations.
Yeah, well, Goth Tiki, Tiki with Ray,
Got Tiki? That would be... No, who's Got Tiki?
Goth Tiki Club.
Oh, Tiki Golf Club.
Tiki
Okay.
Club.
I thought you
Tiki
said
Golf
Got
Club.
Tiki like got
So-
milk. I'm like, what?
Yeah. No, so
That's Kevin Crossman's thing. No,
But
he
you
has he has the shirt that says "Got My
right,
Tie."
but you don't have to leave your home.
Yeah.
You can find all of the recipes that in the 90s and 2000s they worked very diligently to hunt down and recreate. And they're right at your fingertips, super easy. And you can learn how to make those drinks, and that's fantastic, and absolutely. But I think there's a drop in the active groups that come out and spend time at those tiki bars that are getting good.
So can I push back?
Sure.
I think from that perspective, where we're at today is a good thing. That those of us who had, I guess we call them pods during COVID, and the fact that we had home bars, and that Ray, you and a couple other people were the only people that Heidi would allow in the house during peak COVID.
Yeah, because I have good taste in music. Right? And I like YouTube just as much as she does. No, she's the biggest.
Yeah. So,
Well, speaking of home and everything like that, and speaking of COVID, I mean, like, I remember when COVID happened, and like everything shut down. And
Yeah.
to me, I honestly thought, okay, Tiki's gonna die here, because, I mean, how, like, just bars in general, like, are they gonna be able to survive or anything like that? And there's a lot of places that shut down. So my thinking was, if there was gonna be the fourth wave of Tiki, I thought it was gonna go underground and into like people's houses. I thought it was going to be in people's homes, which people started to do. People started to learn how to make cocktails at home. People started to build their home tiki bars. And I was thinking like, okay, well, this potentially could be the fourth wave.
but those of us who had home bars and had tiki friends or pods, or we had a smaller group, some of you out there, we opened our home to COVID, but not to everybody. We actually kept that social alive. And the other thing is, whatever Tiki is, and we'll get to that in a minute because that's kind of underscoring this, but whatever that is, it doesn't work if there isn't a face-to-face social element. Even I know a few people in the area who have home Tiki bars who are introverts and somewhat recluses or don't participate in social media, but even they, at least once a year, want to have people at their bar to drink with or to show off their bar or listen to music. So thankfully that the subculture is a social culture, and the only reason I stay on Facebook is two things: track where the orcas are and track where people are getting together for Tiki.
I thought
Other than that, I'd
I
be
thought
off
it was to
social
follow
media.
my blog posts and videos.
Creator and organizer of TikiCon. Goof. Fool. The aspect I wanted to say is when we started, the TikiCon started off as a Northwest Tiki Crawl. I'm from Buena Park, California. I grew up in Southern California, right by Knott's Berry Farm. And then we moved to San Francisco in the 90s, which is where I met a group of friends that I hang out with and rediscovered my Tiki childhood, which is it's all being a creator. It's all tied up into the oeuvre of who I am, sort of. But we are always finding new people, new home bars. In Portland, even though we were running an event of a home bar tour that we were trying to find as many Tiki people as possible, and we would still find in the corners, in the recesses, people with home Tiki bars who had no idea there were other people who enjoyed this, even at that time. And what I have found with my own specific sensibilities as it is to my interpretation of my own Tiki, as I call it, which is a DIY Tiki punk, sort of, if I can give it time, aspect of punk from it being, there's no one else, and so we just did it. Like, no one told us we couldn't, no one told us we wouldn't, or I wanted to have something, and so I had to make it myself, which is very much a punk aesthetic. So I really enjoy that aspect of a punk Tiki. But with now everyone on Facebook and more people getting into it, I notice and see that I am not alone, even in my creative mind. I see so many creations from other people that I could have sworn was mine. And you look at it and like, that is my tiki, and it's just so great to see other people who you're not alone, like in what you notice about a culture, what you notice about an art, what you notice about connections and how it comes together and how you put that together in your own aesthetic. I can see it might be troubling if you see someone else who you don't know who's just like you, but to flip it on the backside, everyone coming out and having all these fabulous stuff. Tiki Tom's book, there was already a book about home tiki bars. We have another book about home tiki bars. I hope we have more books about home tiki bars. Right? So that's what I'm saying is there are people out there who we still haven't met.
Right.
Who still may know things, who still have connections.
Absolutely. And I think that's, like you were saying, there's definitely a lot of positives to having ease of access to the culture. Like if you're interested in finding out more, or you're out there and you think you're alone, you get on to any of the search engines and you type in Tiki in my area, you're probably going to find something. Maybe someone's personal Facebook page talking about their home bar. And even then, people who aren't on there, when they eventually check, they're going to link up with you, and it's a lot easier to link up.
Coming back to waves of Tiki. So Craig, off camera, you were saying 2006 marked a milestone.
2006, yeah.
So why don't you say that here for the cameras and get back into waves of Tiki and what that means?
Like waves of Tiki, and the idea is that the Mai Kai was like still around. So the Kowloon. Let's see, where to go with this? So in the 90s, there was almost very little Tiki left, I visited. I was up in San Francisco. I was working. I was going to college, and I had a friend who worked in the city, and we went to the Tonga Room, and like everything exploded as far as my brain about what it was like when 1979, like my world ended as a kid. Like 1980 was the start of in Southern California, when like everything got changed. And I met these groups through Tiki Central. We were looking for like what's Falernum, right? The arguments about it. What's Falernum, and where does it come from, and how do you make it? We're still arguing about it, which is fun, but hopefully it's more discussions. Jeff had the recipes, and there are other techniques, and so I was really into that aspect of it, and we all learned together. And then Martin and Rebecca put the book out, and it was all in there.
And I think in terms of drinks, we are in a new wave. I mean, I think the craft cocktail movement, even though it's a little bit long in the tooth now, has been a boon for Tiki. That people like myself aren't afraid to make their own drinks, even if it's a classic drink. I have to make it my own recipe. I don't know, there's some point of pride or authorship, or it's,
I like to say, when you know a drink, you don't need a recipe. And recipe doesn't tell you how to make a drink.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it sounds like goofy and dumb to say it, but a deeper meaning to it.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about where Don the Beachcomber was coming from when he was first inventing these drinks, he was working off a set pattern of some
Yes,
sweet...
come to my seminars.
And then, so he was using some sour, some strong liquor, something soft in there, and then playing off, which was basically a standard cocktail sour mix, and adding more to it. That was inventing these drinks that he was coming up with. And what that thing was adding to it, spices that weren't traditionally considered part of the cocktail world, made something unique and worth playing with. And I think today, what you get is people who want to keep playing and iterating and turn into something new. Maybe it's not the zombie that we remember or zombie that we've had at other places, but their version of it and what they're doing to make it new and unique can be really good.
Well, or we're at Devil's Reef, where Jason has his own drinks. Most of them, we would consider them Tiki drinks, but most of them are unique concoctions, some based on originals, but some just their own thing. And Jason's got a style about it. So a lot of his drinks are Devil's Reef, Jason Alexander drinks.
There's an expansion beyond that, though. The drinks, of course, but we're also starting to see a lot of iterations and growth in what might be the aesthetic of Tiki culture. Like you can go down to Nashville and there is a tiki bar that uses robots from the 50s that might have become stranded on Malaysian island or one of the other islands, and then becomes a tiki for that. And that's the theme that they're running with. And it's within the tiki world, and they're expanding and growing and iterating to create something new and fun and exciting.
So yeah, I want to get in aesthetics in a minute.
Go ahead.
Want to close up. You had a drink thought. Though.
I thought I had drink thought, but I just wanted to say that I was specifically targeting the mixological cocktail aspect of tiki.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
the waves I'll put my bias. I am a full stack tiki from artistic development to carving to everything, and I got my fingers in all sorts of things because it didn't exist or I couldn't afford it 20 years ago, so I just learned how to do it and made it myself. The aspect I wanted to say is what I love too about that bit of tiki, where the word tiki is, what do you mean by tiki? That aspect, my favorite thing about tiki, and why even like myself, I'm not myself technically tiki, though I call myself Colonel Tiki, if you want to be the true meaning of the core time period, is that it has given license for theme bars.
Yeah,
And it goes under that thing of tiki, and whether or not it's tiki, other people can argue that. I'm just extremely thankful that this whimsical, fantastical, living art aspect of going to a service-oriented location, as if it were Disneyland, is nothing but good for my own life.
the next wave is a lot of jumping off from tiki or other immersive environments, whether Chopper in Nashville, robots, or me doing a weird aesthetic that tries to be a little Polynesian, but a lot more other things.
Well, I think that
A mothership, mothership. So you go sci-fi. I wanted to come back full circle. I almost want to throw it back to Ray because Ray, you were saying how.
Hold on.
Yeah,
we can all swap. We're going to do musical chairs here.
this is hot swapping chairs. Who else wants to come up?
Thank you, Craig.
Hold on.
This
I
is
mean,
helpful.
before that, Craig, if anyone knows who Craig is, he is probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I know that knows about tiki.
Yeah, great.
And he could do a black magic.
And this is actually
beautifully
awesome.
and he is a knowledge powerhouse of tiki.
Yeah.
So Craig, thanks for coming up. It's one of those things like Craig wants to talk on my show. Hell yeah, I'd like anytime I've had the opportunity.
You had said, and I had agreed with you, during COVID when we were in lockdown in our tiny little groups in a home bar, both you and I thought that home bars would keep tiki or this immersive bar element alive, and I think that's been true. Now that we're emerging out of the COVID era, though, and this is kind of where I'm coming full circle to when I got in this topic while drinking with you, is, my gosh, there is a new either immersive mothership, San Diego, or true tiki bar, such as Kapu, Petaluma, opening, it seems like every month, all over the U.S. We're reaching another peak. And so I guess we were sort of disproven wrong in that the future isn't just home bars, it's home and commercial bars. My concern is, are we at a peak in the commercial bars? Is this sustainable? Is this a fad? And
I think we are just at the start of it.
Really?
Yeah. And it makes me think about, I did a Tiki Golf Club episode with Jamie, and we were talking about like we were talking about the evolution of goth music, and it's like, can goth evolve? And then she talks about rock and roll, and she's like, well, like rock and roll has evolved, like you got Elvis Presley, and then you got like the Velvet Underground. They're both rock and roll, but completely different. And and it really clicked with me when it came to tiki, because that's what's going on with tiki now. You just like you said, you have places like Mothership, you have places like Chopper. What's the place that's in Brooklyn, Sunken Harbor or something like that?
Sunken Harbor.
And I think that's, to me, this is the next wave of tiki, is that it's going to branch out. You're going to have different types of tiki bars, and it's all going to be under the umbrella of tiki. Now, is it going to be traditional tiki? I think I think you'll still see some traditional tiki bars, but I think you're going to start seeing other types of tiki bars coming out that are going in other directions, especially with the cocktails. Just like you were saying, I mean, a lot of it, like there's a lot of new places coming out where like they're dealing with it's spirits and that are way beyond rum and stuff like that.
Well, I think there's going to be a combination in here, honestly.
Okay.
And I may have sounded like I was not appreciative of the social media aspect of this, but I would not have met half the people I know in the tiki world if I hadn't joined the Tacoma Tiki Ohana and then the Pacific Northwest Tiki Ohana groups on Facebook. I learned about the social events that I then got to participate in and meet people. But that's where these bars come into play, the social locations. That's a safe space to meet someone that you've never met before. Find out if they are someone that you want to invite into your home tiki bar, if you have one, or experience other people's home tiki bars when you want to get to know and spend more time with them, right?
Yeah. So, my concern is that we might reach a peak or a saturation, or it might be a fad. These immersive bars, these tiki bars. I'm glad to see, Ray, you're a lot more optimistic that we're at the front end of a wave than the back end of a wave.
I mean, if you want to say anything about peak tiki, I think the traditional Polynesian pop as we know it, I think it's probably been at its peak. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more tiki variations. I think you're going to see more and more of.
Yeah. So what?
I'm not saying. Here's the thing. I mean, I'm all about the old school tiki bars. I mean, I like the traditional tiki bars. Give me the Alibi, give me Tiki Tea, give me the Mai Tai, and I love. When I used to drink, I love the old school tiki cocktails. That's what I like. I'm not saying that like I'm on board with like everything that all these new different types of tiki bars are going to open up. I'm going to like what I'm going to like, but I'm saying I think that is going to be the future of it.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that we kind of might be there now. I honestly thought COVID was going to kill Tiki dead. I thought it was done. And it just blew my mind when I started to see all these new Tiki bars opening up across the country. It makes me happy. Or even like the Mai Tai. I thought like the Mai Tai's done. I honestly thought that was done. Now it's going to be opening up in the summertime.
And I think tempering my pessimism, because you never know what's in the future.
Well, why are you pessimistic?
Well, you just look at history and you look at waves. So immersive bars in the 1920s in the West Coast, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in other places, those were huge. And the Great Depression helped kill that off. The 40s, we had World War II. Then the 50s, we built back into the 60s in Tiki, and that was a big thing. But then a younger generation rebelled against that. That was their parents' thing, and so it sort of devolved into this sticky, sweet 70s after effect of beach tiki. And then the punk aesthetic Craig helped sort of infuse the both the history appreciation and the do-it-yourself, because now it's your grandfathers or your great uncles, and so it didn't have the stigma that your parents attached to it.
Yeah.
And I thought 2008 and the financial crisis would have a bigger effect on commercial than it did. I, like you, was worried COVID would kill it. But the reason for, and you can't predict the future or trends, but I will say in thinking about this, my sense of optimism right now, at least for the next 10 years, 5 years I'll say, or 10 years, is the appreciation for the Disney theme parks informs me, in that when I was about 20 years ago, I would go to Disney theme parks, with or without my wife, and we don't have kids, and some of my peers...
Well, who are you going with then, Steven?
Why do I need to go with anyone? That's my point.
He really loves It's a Small World, and he wanted to ride it over and over and over.
Ask Heidi about A Small World, but a lot of my peer group thought that was sort of like a funny thing to do. And now even my peer group, as I get older, most of them are like, yeah, Disney without kids, that's cool, The bars that are opening up, the Epcot.
There should be a Disney without kids day. Right? Yeah, we get a round of applause there, you know.
But if you think about it, intergenerationally, from people in their 60s all the way to people in their 20s, the generation, there's not a generational stigma as much as maybe there used to be of my parents' thing or I want to do my own thing. There's a lot more opportunities. And when I look at Disney, I look at its increased popularity among, it's always been kids, whatever generation, but people in their 20s, people in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s. Is there anybody who, by and large, I mean, there are always exceptions, looks askance at you for going to Disney alone as an adult now? Is that such a bad thing? Is there a generation that doesn't accept Disney in an immersion like maybe they didn't? Because when I was growing up, Disney was seen as for kids.
Because it is.
No, it's for everybody though, and that's my point. And
Get it hard.
High school because they made so it wasn't for kids. Like it was for little kids.
yeah,
In the sense,
There needs to be a T-shirt that says Disney is not for kids.
but I think, but no, that's accepted now. I think, I hope,
If
and
anyone is not aware of the Disney Day Drinkers Club, you should be.
yeah.
The Disney Day Drinkers Club,
Disney Day Drinkers Club, the D3 Club,
D3 Club.
it's a thing.
And so the reason I go on this riff on Disney and the intergenerational appreciation of Disney is that carries forward into, in my mind, an appreciation for immersive bars, i.e., what we're loosely calling tiki bars.
Yeah.
And I'll temper my pessimism that all things go through phases, and these times won't last forever. But with the optimism is that we're at a stage where intergenerationally, there's a huge appreciation for an immersive environment in your home or a commercial bar, and the best immersive environments outside of the theme park is, to my mind, a tiki bar, because it brings not only the immersion, the escapism, it tells a good story, it has a feel, it has a theme, but then coming back to where we started, Sean, the idea of the social element. The activity is the drinking and the social element and the being together. So in that sense, I'm optimistic because I don't see a seismic generational shift like you do in certain businesses or certain activities that will kill it. And right now, we're not at a stage of saturation. My future worry is there's a goose that killed a golden egg, that we get saturated in certain media markets, and that to survive, they'll need to devolve. They'll need to change the drinks, water down the drinks, get a more party clientele, or that sort of thing. And that may or may not happen, but I haven't quite seen it universally yet.
And so I think that's where I want to talk about my level of optimism for why I think there is going to be a continued surge in the tiki world, in the immersive environment world, is because there is still a lot of people out there who are coming into this world, and they want to create good environments with really good drinks that they're practicing their craft on. You do get the occasional place where you hear about they're going back to sugar syrups or saccharin syrups, and they're not going to create their own mixers, and they're not going, and everything feels just a little bit fake. But I think that's what killed tiki to begin with in the 70s and 60s was they lost the craft. And then when you go into a tiki bar and you have something that doesn't taste good and it doesn't feel real, you stop going. And when you go out now, a lot of these places that are being built, that are opening, you walk in and they feel right. And the people behind the bar, they care about the drinks they're making, and you can tell.
I honestly think when it comes to any kind of immersion bar, it's kind of like the thing like when I go into a tiki bar, like say for example, like when I went to Holly Paley for the first time, well it was Thatch. I remember walking in there and I was just blown away of like, oh my god, I can't believe that this place exists. And anytime I go into a really awesome tiki bar, or even like the Devil's Reef, it's like, oh my god, this is so incredible. And when you start seeing all the little details, I honestly think the cream's going to rise to the top when it comes to any kind of immersion bar. If they do it right and they do it good, people are going to come. But if you do it half-assed, or if you do it cheaply, it's not going to last.
And that's what you have to watch out for, is if more places come out and they don't try to do it because they love what they're doing and they're just trying to make a buck off the people who do love it, it's going to get noticed and people are going to stop going, and that's going to be what people point to when they say, this is what Tiki is now. A Mai Tai that's not made with rum and orgeat and triple sec or Cointreau or whatever it is, but it's using sugar syrup and coconut flavored rum liqueur, and then they're calling that a Mai Tai, and that's what everyone starts thinking of. It's going to get noticed, and those drinks, people are going to stop attending. But as long as people do care, new people are going to come in and really enjoy this because it is a great place.
Do you all care about Tiki? All of you guys out there.
So,
Do you care about Tiki? And as long as we have people out in the audience that care about Tiki, and we all care about each other, Tiki's not going to go anywhere. And even if it evolves, that's okay. Tiki's not going anywhere, whether we're in the fourth wave, the fifth wave, or whatever wave. Does anyone have any questions? Or any questions for Craig? No? Okay. All right, let's get back to drinking. Thank you, everyone.
did we talk about what you wanted to talk about?
No, not at all.